You begin tonight in a place where the air is warm. The world is quieter than you expect, and the horizon glows the dusty orange of a sun that hasn't quite decided whether it's rising or giving up. You stand on a soft patch of earth somewhere along the old Silk Road. Yes, that Silk Road, the one with caravans, merchants, spices, gossip, and probably at least one guy who insists he invented everything. A faint breeze moves past you, carrying the smell of sage, dried grasses, and something a little sweet, something ancient, something that may or may not remind you of that one neighbor who always claims he's burning incense at 2 a.m. You hear distant bells, camel bells probably, or maybe someone's dinner, hard to say. In this world, everything feels half familiar and half dream, like you've stepped into a bedtime documentary where you're not entirely sure if you're learning or just drifting. As you take a slow breath, you notice a small camp just ahead circle of woven tents, low fire crackling, smoke swirling lazily upward. And congratulations, you've just walked directly into one of humanity's oldest encounters with cannabis. People have been using the plant for thousands of years, long before modern arguments about legality, wellness, or that one friend who swears it helps their creative process. In fact, the Scythians, nomadic horse people who roamed these steppes, heated hemp seeds in tiny bronze burners to create thick, aromatic clouds during rituals. Herodotus even wrote about it, although historians still debate whether he was reporting facts or just having a very productive imagination. As you approach the camp, you hear soft laughter and low conversation. Nobody seems surprised to see you. It's that dream logic again. You're simply folded into their evening as if you've always been here, wandering these spice-scented plains with your cloak, your curiosity, and absolutely no idea what's for dinner. A young woman in a fur-lined robe waves you over with the kind of friendly confidence that suggests she assumes you are competent. You are not. Of course, you probably won't make it through this day, but she doesn't need to know that. You step closer to the fire. Its warmth settles into your arms like a blanket that has strong opinions about how cold nights should feel. The people around the flames are preparing for a small ceremony. Bronze cauldrons sit nestled into the coals, heating stones until they glow faintly. Someone sprinkles crushed hemp seeds onto the hot surface, and a delicate, spicy scent blooms immediately, curling through the air like a cat stretching. If you listen closely beneath the murmuring voices and crackling wood, you can hear the tiny hiss of resin meeting heat. The smoke thickens, drifting upward in slow spirals. A few people inhale deeply, eyes half closed, shoulders lowering as if the weight of the day has politely stepped aside. This is your first obscure tidbit of the night. Some ancient cultures believed cannabis smoke could bridge the living world and the spirit world, acting as a sort of fragrant Wi-Fi connection. You lean into the firelight, feeling its warmth on your face, and wonder what messages these rituals carried: comfort for the grieving, blessings for travelers, maybe even guidance for someone who kept losing their sandals. A man sits beside you, wrapped in a long cloak embroidered with faded patterns. His beard is magnificent, the sort of beard that looks like it has survived weather events. He hands you a small piece of dried fruit, dates or figs. You think and says something in a language you somehow understand, just enough to nod at. The sweetness coats your tongue. A soft hum spreads through the camp as people begin chanting low, rhythmic notes that blend into the smoke-swirled air. The world here feels ancient but alive, comforting but strange, like you're walking through the footnotes of a forgotten text. The dog wanders past you, sniffs at your boots, and decides you're harmless. That might be your first victory today. Someone nudges you gently, pointing upward. Stars spill across the sky, rivers of silver dust, constellations burning bright enough to trace with your fingertips. Out here, far from cities, the sky feels like it's finally getting to speak at full volume. You let your shoulders relax. You let the tension around your eyes soften. You let your breathing slow, syncing with the crackling fire. Before the ritual begins in full, a soft voice beside you murmurs something that sounds suspiciously like, "You should subscribe." In your world, that means, if you're enjoying this quiet walk through history, gently tap the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. There's something magical about seeing sleepy listeners from all over the world drifting through time zones together. The smoke thickens, The stars brighten. The night deepens. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. You sit a little closer to the fire now, feeling the ground warm beneath you as the Scythian ritual slowly unfolds. The bronze cauldrons glow a deeper orange, their surfaces pulsing with heat like quiet heartbeat drums. You can hear the soft crackle of dry brush, feeding the flames, and the rhythmic swish of robes as people shift and settle into a loose circle. The smoke is thicker now, soft, fragrant, swirling in lazy spirals that wander wherever they please. It curls around your shoulders with the casual familiarity of a house cat that assumes you're here specifically to pet it. As you watch, the ritual leader, a tall woman with braids that fall past her waist, steps forward and scatters another handful of hemp seeds onto the heated stones. They sizzle and release a vivid burst of aroma, the kind that drifts deep into your senses and makes the air feel heavy with memory. Some of the participants close their eyes and sway gently, as if the smoke itself is nudging their thoughts towards softer, slower places. You notice someone chuckle lightly beside you, the kind of half-laugh that says, "Yes, the world is complicated, but right now it's actually pretty nice." You glance down and realize that someone has placed a small woven mat at your side. Apparently you now have a designated sitting spot. It's comfortable, surprisingly so, especially for something made from plant fibers and ancient kindness. You settle onto it, crossing your legs in what you hope looks like a relaxed posture, and not a "my foot fell asleep but I'm pretending it didn't" posture. This is the moment when the storyteller in you perks up because another ancient fact gently weaves itself into the night. Many early Eurasian communities used cannabis in funerary rites, believing that the rising smoke helped carry the spirits of the departed upward, guiding them into whatever rested beyond the sky. Archaeologists have found charred hemp seeds in burial mounds across the region, and yet historians still debate whether these rituals were meant for mourning, celebration, or simply helping everyone feel a little less stressed about the afterlife. The braided woman begins a chant, not loud, not dramatic, but soft and rhythmic, like someone humming a lullaby into the belly of a storm. The others join in slowly, their voices low and warm, blending into the thickening smoke until sound and scent seem to sway together like two dancers who have known each other for centuries. The chanting shifts, rising slightly, then sinking again, almost like a tide. You feel your own breathing mimic the rhythm without thinking. In, slow and steady. Out, even slower, letting the air settle back into the night. You don't understand all the words, but you understand the intention behind them. Gratitude for the land, for the season, for the fire, for the strange plant that carried stories, healing, and maybe just a little recreational curiosity across thousands of miles. Someone passes around a small clay bowl filled with more hemp seeds. They offer it to you with a friendly nod. You politely decline. You learned your lesson earlier when you realized your competent traveler aura is mostly smoke and bravado, but you appreciate the gesture. The bowl moves on, everyone sharing in the preparation, as if this ritual belongs to the entire group rather than a single leader. A child wanders into the circle, small, wide-eyed, hair sticking out in wild tufts. They plop down next to you and stare up at the drifting smoke with intense concentration. Then they lean slightly toward you and whisper. Sometimes the spirits hide in the dark parts of the smoke. Their tone implies this is both fascinating and completely normal. Then they giggle, sneeze, and run off again. Childhood remains undefeated across all centuries. You shift slightly, feeling the heat of the fire seep through your clothes and into your bones. A hint of sweet resin lingers on the wind, followed by the earthy scent of trampled grass. The ritual seems timeless, no clear beginning, no defined end, just a gentle flow of actions, songs, and shared breath. An older man with a face like folded parchment sits across from you. He watches the smoke with a thoughtful expression, then says something that roughly translates to, "Smoke rises because it remembers home better than we do." It's philosophical, poetic, and maybe a little confusing, but you nod because it feels like the right thing to do. Your obscure cultural tidbit of this section appears right on cue. Among some early nomadic groups, cannabis wasn't only used for ritual, it was also believed to deter insects when burned in small quantities, ancient pest control with a surprisingly pleasant aroma. Imagine your modern citronella candle, except older, smokier, and possibly accompanied by a horse staring at you while judging your life choices. The chanting shifts again, slowing, deepening. You feel the sound settle into the ground beneath you, resonating in a way that makes your chest feel just a little lighter, your thoughts just a little softer. The fire pops once, sending a tiny spray of sparks into the air. One lands gently on the edge of your mat and fizzles harmlessly. You brush it away with a very calm, very collected motion that totally hides the tiny panic moment you had. Someone pours warm tea into a carved wooden cup and hands it to you. The drink tastes like herbs, smoke, and a hint of honey. You can't identify the ingredients, but it's good, comforting, grounding, a flavor that says, you survived the first part of the ceremony. Well done. The stars above feel closer now, as if they've drawn slightly inward to watch the ritual alongside you. And though the night is deepening, the calm around you only grows. The chanting softens into a low hum, like a river, settling after a long stretch of rapids, and the smoke thins just enough for you to see the edge of the camp again. Shapes move in the distance slow, ambling silhouettes swaying side to side. At first, you assume it's more of the ritual, maybe some type of dramatic entrance. But no, the shapes resolve into a line of camels plodding wearily toward the firelight, each step lifted with the exaggerated enthusiasm of an animal that has been doing this job for a very long time and would very much like a nap. A caravan is arriving. The Scythians stop chanting. Though the energy in the circle doesn't vanish, it simply shifts, redirecting toward the newcomers. A few people rise from their seats, stretch their shoulders, and jog lightly across the camp to greet the arrivals. The camels snort, the bells around their necks chiming softly like tired wind chimes. One camel, in particular, stares you directly in the eye for a full 3 seconds too long. It's a look that says, without needing translation, I have seen things. Do not test me. The merchants dismount with practiced ease. Their cloaks are dusty from days of travel, their boots worn thin, and their arms full of bundles tied in fragrant cloth. Herbs, spices, dried fruits, beads, metal trinkets, and the sort of portable luxuries that could brighten even the bleakest steps. Though everyone here lives simply, you can tell that small treasures travel far, and tonight, among their goods, is yet another thread in the long story of cannabis. The merchants carry dried flowers and seeds traded from distant valleys, where the plant grows wild along riverbanks, thriving under harsh sun and colder nights. These travelers have walked for weeks, possibly months, gathering things people want, things people need, and things that might fetch enough coin to justify waking up at dawn far more often than anyone should. A young merchant with dust-coated eyebrows approaches your part of the camp. His grin is lopsided, charming, and just skeptical enough to suggest he has negotiated prices with thousands of customers and never once fully trusted one. He unwraps a small cloth pouch and lets you look inside. You see tightly bundled plant matter fibers, seeds, bits of stem, another reminder of how deeply cannabis wound itself through ancient trade. He tells you that in some villages farther east, mothers wove hemp fibers into clothing to make garments both strong and surprisingly soft. In others, people toss the seeds into cooking pots to add a warm, nutty flavor to stews. You nod as if you understand ancient culinary chemistry. Really, you're just imagining yourself trying to make a stew over an open fire and accidentally inventing smoke-driven chaos. The air shifts again as the caravan unloads more goods. And just to your left, two merchants begin bickering amicably, but passionately about who discovered a new source of high-quality hemp earlier that season. Their argument involves dramatic gestures, exaggerated tales, and at least one claim that sounds suspiciously like someone trying to impress their crush. Historians still debate whether these traveling merchants exaggerated their discoveries, or whether some regions truly produced legendary strains of the plant. You notice one merchant wearing a necklace made of small carved wooden animals. The tiny figures dangle as he moves, creating an oddly soothing clicking sound. When he catches you staring, he explains that some cultures used cannabis seeds as part of fortune-telling rituals. They would toss a handful onto a heated surface and interpret the popping patterns and directions, a kind of ancient popcorn divination. You try to look respectfully fascinated instead of amused, but the idea of someone trying to interpret your future based on seed trajectories is, admittedly, kind of delightful. There's your obscure tidbit for this section. Fortune tellers using hemp seeds as miniature omens. Ancient people really said, let's burn this plant and see what it wants to tell us. And honestly, that's fairly relatable. The camp becomes louder now, more animated, as the newcomers unpack items and share news from other settlements. You catch bits of conversation, snow beginning early in the mountains, a river that dried too quickly this summer, a rival tribe that recently held a festival complete with horse races. So chaotic, someone probably ended up wearing the prize tent instead of pitching it. And then someone pulls out a drum, a small, handheld one, its surface stretched taut with animal hide. They give it a few test taps, and instantly the sound settles into your chest with a deep, comforting vibration. Soon, a rhythm emerges, slow, earthy, steady. You find yourself tapping your fingers against your knee in spite of yourself. The Scythians begin dancing around the fire, not a wild or frenzied dance, but a grounded one, small steps, gentle sways, movements guided by breath as much as melody. You feel yourself unwinding with each beat, each step, each swirl of smoke drifting off the heated stones. A merchant hands you a cup of warm, spiced milk. It tastes faintly of cinnamon and something woodsy, maybe cardamom, or maybe ancient cardamom's cousin. You sip it slowly and feel warmth spreading all the way down to your toes. Someone laughs nearby, one of those big, open laughs that shake their whole shoulders. Another camel sighs dramatically in the background, possibly offended it wasn't invited to participate. And just when you're starting to think the night can't become more atmospheric, someone begins telling a story. A storyteller, older than dust and younger than mischief, steps forward and begins weaving tales of spirits that hide in the hills, of strangers who wander into dreams, and of plants like cannabis that served as guides, companions, and protectors long before written history decided what was worth remembering. You feel yourself leaning into the story, drifting with it, letting it pull you gently across the night. The smoke rises, the stars shift, and the ancient world opens yet another door before you. The storyteller's voice fades into the crackling night, and as the last echo settles, someone touches your shoulder lightly, just a gentle tap, the universal ancient gesture for, "Come with me, there's something interesting you should see." You rise, stretching your legs, which respond by making tiny crackling noises that betray your modern lifestyle. You're led toward a large tent set a little apart from the others. Its entrance flap is decorated with strings of beads that catch the firelight and scatter it in soft flickers. A warm glow spills from inside, along with a herbal scent, earthy, resinous, layered with something sweet and unfamiliar. When you step through the bead curtain, you enter another pocket of the ancient world entirely. This is the healing tent. Thick rugs cover the ground, their patterns winding like rivers and roots. Low shelves line the walls, filled with jars of dried leaves, bark, seeds, powders, and bundles wrapped tightly with braided cord. A small metal pot simmers over coals, releasing fragrant steam into the air. A healer, an older woman with silver-streaked hair, sits cross-legged beside the pot. She looks up at you with calm eyes, the kind that instantly make you wonder why you haven't been drinking more water and sleeping 8 hours every night. She gestures for you to sit. You lower yourself onto a woven cushion and feel the warmth from the coals spread toward you. The healer picks up a handful of dried cannabis flowers and crushes them gently between her palms. The scent releases immediately sharp, herbal, layered with notes of grass and spice. She sprinkles the plant into the pot, and the steam thickens, carrying the aroma throughout the tent. Cannabis wasn't only a ritual plant in the ancient world, it was medicine. The healer explains, in simple gestures and quiet phrases, that people used it for pain relief, muscle relaxation, and easing troubled sleep. Archaeological evidence from Central Asia suggests that thousands of years ago, healers like her brewed cannabis-infused teas or applied it mixed with animal fat as a balm. And while much of this knowledge survives only in fragments, historians still debate whether these mixtures were standardized treatments or personal recipes handed down like secret family stew instructions. She picks up another jar, tapping it lightly. Inside are hemp seeds, glistening with natural oils. She pours a few onto a cloth and folds it, demonstrating how warmed seeds could be pressed against sore joints or bruises as makeshift heat packs. You watch her movements slow, practiced, purposeful. You get the sense she could identify every plant in a 20-mile radius and judge its mood just by sniffing it. Around the tent are patients. One man lies on his side, wrapped in furs, his breathing shallow but steady. Another sits with his arm in a sling, humming quietly as an apprentice grinds herbs in a stone bowl. A woman with a tired face sips a warm drink from a clay cup, her eyes drifting closed between each swallow. The healer hands you a cup as well. The tea is warm, faintly bitter, but comforting. It tastes like a blend of ancient sleep remedies, and the kind of beverage someone insists is good for you, even if you can't pronounce half the ingredients. As you sip, your obscure tidbit of the night emerges naturally. Ancient Persian texts mention cannabis, mixed with fermented drinks, as a tool for anesthesia. Primitive and risky, yes, but surprisingly effective for the era. It makes you appreciate your modern dentist a little more. Just a little. A soft breeze lifts the tent flap, carrying in a wisp of smoke from the ritual fire outside. It mingles with the steam from the pot, creating a layered haze that blurs the edges of the rugs and softens every torchlit shadow. You feel your shoulders sink a little lower, your breath slow, your mind loosen, but stay aware in a warm, hazy sort of way. The healer begins explaining again through gestures that cannabis wasn't a cure-all, but a companion herb. It eased pain, soothed anxieties, helped restless minds settle long enough to sleep. And while modern people have a habit of giving plants dramatic reputations, these ancient communities approached cannabis like a humble tool, helpful, respected, and never the main character. At one point, the healer takes a pinch of resin and presses it into a small clay mold. She hands the cooled piece to you. It's sticky, dark, and oddly comforting to hold like a tiny relic of the world, before writing, before borders, before alarms that go off at 6 a.m. for no good reason. A patient murmurs a thank you as the apprentice finishes wrapping his arm with soft bandages infused with warmed hemp oil. The healer nods, satisfied. You can't help but think she could run a modern urgent care with terrifying efficiency. A soft laugh escapes your lips, one of those quiet, reflexive ones that come when you realize the past was far more human than textbooks imply. The healer smiles back knowingly. She has probably seen your exact expression on many travelers' faces. The moment when history stops feeling distant. The pot bubbles, the lanterns sway, the air hums with warmth and herbs, and beyond the beads at the entrance, you can still hear the faint rhythm of drums in the night, steady, grounding, waiting for you to return. When you finally step back outside the healing tent, the night air wraps around you like cool water. The wind has shifted direction, carrying with it the dusty sweetness of the steppes and the distant sound of a camel snoring, loud enough to qualify as percussion. The fire burns lower now, its embers glowing like tiny suns resting in a bed of coal-black earth. A few people still linger around it, talking softly or poking the logs with sticks in the universal ancient tradition of fire maintenance, which is mostly just recreational poking. But your guide, the same person who summoned you to the healing tent, gestures for you to follow them once again. Their steps crunch through the dry grass in a purposeful rhythm, and you trail behind, wondering if this is how spontaneous quests start. You weave past the edge of camp, past a cluster of tied horses munching lazily on hay, and approach an area marked by a half-circle of woven fences. A small gate opens with a soft creak. You step inside. This is the camp's hidden garden. Not a lush, sprawling paradise, but a carefully tended patch of earth that survives purely through human stubbornness and tender attention. Tiny clay lamps line the perimeter, their flames wavering like they're whispering secrets to each other. The garden beds are neat and symmetrical, filled with herbs you mostly don't recognize, and a few scraggly plants struggling bravely against the climate. But in the far corner, shielded by a windbreak of tall reeds, grows a small cluster of cannabis plants. Their leaves catch the lantern glow, creating a delicate silhouette, thin, serrated fingers stretching outward like they're waving hello. Some are tall and spindly, others short and bushy, some with small buds forming near the nodes. These plants aren't here for ceremony only. They're grown by hand, cared for daily, harvested carefully. Your guide kneels beside them and points out the careful ridges of soil, the irrigation channels dug to capture every precious drop of water. They pluck a leaf and place it gently into your palm. It's soft, thin, and slightly cool. A small living piece of history, tucked into your hand like a secret you're now responsible for. You learn a new fact here. Ancient farmers across Central Asia selectively bred cannabis for different purposes. Some varieties were chosen for strong fiber, perfect for rope, nets, clothing, Others were grown for resin-rich flowers, valued in rituals, medicine, and sometimes for simple relaxation after days that felt way too long. And while that sounds advanced, historians still debate how intentional this selective cultivation was, versus how much of it was happy accident powered by observation, trial, and probably a lot of pointing and shrugging. Your guide shows you the difference. Thicker stems for fiber, resinous buds for smoke, delicate seeds for food or oil. They place a few seeds into your hand. They rattle softly like the sound of tiny, ancient maracas. Across the garden, a young apprentice tends to the plants with a stone knife, loosening soil, trimming leaves, inspecting roots. The apprentice glances up and flashes a shy smile before returning to work, humming a tune so off-key it transcends tone and becomes abstract music. You crouch down near a row of small seedlings. They look fragile, almost timid, like they're not entirely sure they're ready for this whole growing up thing. You understand them deeply. Your guide taps the ground next to them, explaining with gestures that even nomadic people sometimes maintain traveling gardens, small patches of beloved plants they carried with them in wagons or saddlebags, replanting and rearranging them like living companions. In this way, cannabis traveled with them across continents, becoming part of dozens of cultural traditions simply by virtue of being portable, hardy, and apparently quite cooperative. For your obscure tidbit tonight, early Chinese farmers sometimes used hemp fibers in bowstrings, giving archers smoother shots and increasing accuracy. Imagine ancient warriors bragging about their premium hemp string bow, while you're still trying to figure out which end of the arrow is supposed to point forward. The wind rustles the plants, creating a soft whispering sound, almost like pages turning in a very old book. You look up at the stars again. They seem brighter now, sharper, like you can see each constellation's breath. Maybe it's the garden, maybe it's the night, or maybe it's the fact that, for once, there's no rush. You breathe in slowly, and the scent of earth and resin fills your lungs. The sound of the distant fire mixes with the chirping of insects, and you feel yourself settling, grounding, quieting from the inside out. Your guide rises, nods to you, and signals that it's time to return to camp. The lamps flicker as you leave the hidden garden behind, tucking the memory of its quiet warmth into your chest. Tonight, the ancient world feels more alive than ever. And so do you, calm, grounded, wandering deeper into history's softest corners. Back at camp, the energy has mellowed. The fire burns low, conversations drift lazily like embers, and a faint haze lingers in the air, part spice smoke, part ritual remnants, part the accumulated exhale of a community settling in for the night. You find your mat still exactly where you left it. Maybe someone tidied it for you. Or maybe ancient hospitality includes, please do not lose your assigned floor square. You sit, stretching your legs in front of you, when a traveler you haven't seen before approaches. He's tall, wrapped in layers of wool and leather, and carries an intricately carved wooden box under one arm about the size of a loaf of bread but far more mysterious. He sits down beside you with the comfortable heaviness of someone who has been riding all day and is done pretending otherwise. Without a word, he sets the box, in the dust between you. The carvings catch the firelight, spirals, waves, tiny stylized animals that might be foxes or might be rabbits, depending on how long you stare at them. He slides the lid open. Inside are tools, small scrapers, polished stones, metal picks, wooden spoons, and a tiny mortar worn smooth with years of use. This is a traveling kit for preparing cannabis in all its ancient forms. He shows you each piece with the pride of a craftsman displaying his trade. He picks up a lump of resin, dark, pliable, smelling faintly of earth and smoke. Resin like this might have been collected from wild plants or carefully harvested from cultivated ones. He pulls off a small piece, warms it between his palms, and rolls it into a tiny ball. It's oddly soothing to watch, like seeing someone knead dough but on a scale meant for miniature kitchens. Then he crushes the ball with one of the flat stones, explaining through gestures that different preparations were used for different rituals. Powdered resin for burning, pressed resin for medicinal paste, thick resin for special ceremonies. You nod like you understand all of this. You do not, but the confidence of nodding transcends language. He pulls out dried flowers next crisp, delicate, slightly sticky. He rubs them gently between his fingers, letting the pieces fall into a small bowl. The firelight makes the fragments gleam. Some communities, he indicates, blended cannabis with other aromatic herbs, lavender, sage, juniper, sometimes even wild mint. Imagine ancient potpourri, but with stronger opinions. There's your historical fact for this section. Archaeological finds in ancient Pamir mountain tombs included wooden bowls filled with cannabis flowers, believed to have been placed there for ritual burning. The burials were surprisingly sophisticated, complete with harps, silk, and beautifully crafted tools. Historians still debate whether the cannabis was meant for the living participants or the deceased themselves. Without warning, the traveler hands you a tool, a tiny carved spoon with a long handle. He mimes scooping and sprinkling, inviting you to try. You perform the motions as gracefully as possible, even though your hand coordination is at mildly chaotic toddler, attempting arts and crafts level. He smiles warmly, clearly charmed by your effort. Then he reaches into the box again and retrieves an object wrapped in cloth. When he unwraps it, you see a hollow wooden pipe, short, sturdy, decorated with tiny chiseled markings. This isn't for casual use. It's a ceremonial piece, likely reserved for rare gatherings and important nights. He holds it reverently, as if the stories of hundreds of evenings sleep inside its grain. He doesn't offer it to you not because he's unfriendly, but because this world abides by its own boundaries, its own unspoken etiquette. Some things you witness, some things you touch, some things you simply honor by being present. As he repacks the tools, you notice one last item. A small leather pouch containing dice, pebbles, no seeds. Carefully selected seeds, round and glossy. He pours a few into his palm and lets you observe them. He explains, through a mix of gestures and sounds, that these seeds are from a strain grown in a mountain valley far to the west, known for producing fibers so strong that entire fishing nets were woven from them. An obscure tidbit for you. Some ancient coastal communities believed hemp nets were spirit-proof, capable of catching not just fish, but mischievous supernatural creatures. You avoid asking whether the nets were ever put to the test. When the traveler finishes packing the box, he taps the lid closed gently, like you might tap a sleeping child's blanket to tuck it in. He rises, nods to you once, and moves back toward the line of tents, the wooden box held carefully against his chest. You're left with the warmth of the fire, the sweet smoky air, and the sense that you've just been allowed to peek into a craft that traveled through hands, generations, landscapes, and cultures, quietly shaping lives along the way. The fire pops. A horse snorts. The stars shift overhead, like slow-moving lanterns. And the night drifts on, inviting you deeper into its ancient calm. The fire has burned down to a deep, steady glow, embers pulsing like sleepy red eyes beneath a blanket of ash. Most of the camp has settled into softer rhythms now. Murmured conversations, quiet laughter, the occasional clink of pottery. You lean back on your mat and let your shoulders relax, breathing in the cool night air that slips like silk between the tents. Just when you think the evening might drift into silence, the camp's elder storyteller approaches with a wooden staff and a grin that has seen many worlds and remained unbothered by all of them. You've seen glimpses of him earlier wrapped in wool, beard like a snowy waterfall, expression permanently set to kindly but suspicious of your ability to survive here. He sits beside you without asking, because permission is implied in ancient storyteller culture. Stories choose listeners, not the other way around. He taps his staff gently against the ground, sending a tiny spray of sparks upward. The embers brighten, as if obediently leaning in. A few others gather around, drawn like moths not by firelight, but by the promise of narratives floating on smoky air. The storyteller begins in a low, melodic voice, each word shaped carefully, like he's sculpting them from warm clay. You can't understand every syllable, but the tone carries meaning. This is a tale about beginnings, about journeys, about the plant whose scent still threads through the air around you. He gestures to the horizon with his staff. The tale speaks of ancient tribes who followed rivers across deserts, carrying flax, millet, and cannabis seeds in little leather pouches sewn into their belts. The seeds represented continuity, portable life, portable comfort, portable future. These travelers believed that wherever the seeds sprouted, the spirit of home sprouted with them. As he talks, the fire crackles louder, leaning in like it has opinions. You get your major historical fact of this section. Early Indo-Iranian cultures included cannabis in ritual bundles buried with shamans, suggesting the plant played a direct role in guiding spiritual journeys. Archaeologists found woven bags filled with preserved flowers under layers of frost, revealing traditions frozen in time. Historians still debate whether the shamans themselves cultivated the plants, or if the community contributed them as sacred offerings. The storyteller draws a spiral in the dirt with the tip of his staff. The spiral grows wider, sweeping outwards until it resembles the swirling shape of smoke itself. He explains through a mix of signs and soft sounds that some believed cannabis smoke carried messages upward to deities who lived in the sky. A poetic ancient mail system with significantly fewer delivery delays than what you get today. Another swirl. Another layer of the story. This one is lighter, almost humorous. It tells of a nomad who once tried to store his hemp in a tightly sealed goatskin bag. Weeks later, he opened it to discover the bag swollen, the smell powerful enough to stun a camel. And the contents, well, highly potent would be the modern phrase. The storyteller chuckles as he describes the entire camp reacting dramatically. You imagine coughing, laughing, people waving their arms at invisible spirits, a camel rolling its eyes, the whole thing descending into beautiful chaos. Everyone listening chuckles softly. And you join them, even though your laugh comes out a little sleepier than expected. For your obscure tidbit, some ancient herders believed that cannabis plants preferred music, specifically deep, rhythmic drumming. They claimed the plants grew taller after nights, filled with song. There's no archaeological proof, but there is a charming painting on an old shard of pottery that shows a man drumming beside a hemp field, with the intensity of someone performing to a very enthusiastic crowd of plants. As the storyteller continues weaving his tales, the night deepens. The stars shift overhead, constellations sliding across the sky like slow-moving lanterns. The smoke above the fire rises in long, soft ribbons. It looks almost alive, curling into shapes that resemble animals, faces, mountains, your imagination filling the gaps the same way humans have done for thousands of years. The storyteller lowers his voice. His final tale in this sequence is quieter, built from whisper-soft words. It describes a lonely traveler, someone not unlike you, who arrived at a camp on a cold night. The traveler was weary, sleepless, burdened. But the scent of burning herbs, the warmth of strangers, and the gentle hum of ritual eased their mind until their thoughts drifted like smoke into stillness. You realize the tale is about comfort, about community, about the subtle ways ancient people cared for each other without grand speeches or elaborate rituals. Sometimes care was simply, come sit by our fire, breathe, rest here a while. The storyteller finishes. He taps his staff once softly this time. The ember glow settles again, warm and steady, like the heartbeat of the night. He pats your shoulder before leaving, as if approving your progress as a temporary ancient visitor. High praise, truly. You lie back on your mat for a moment, gazing upward. The stars blur slightly. Not because of anything you inhaled, no, definitely not, but because your eyes have finally started relaxing, letting the world soften around the edges. The camp is safe. The night is calm. Your journey continues. You rise slowly from your mat, drawn by the moon's pale glow stretching across the open steppe. It feels like stepping into a silver-tinted dream. The wind, the brushes against your cheek, a cool, steady touch that smells faintly of sage, dust, and the smoke still drifting lazily from the fire behind you. Someone is softly humming a lullaby somewhere near the tents, and the sound floats through the night like a thread of music suspended in air. You decide to take a quiet walk, a safe walk, no dramatic cliffs, no wolves, no sudden time portals, just a simple stretch of your legs with the moon as your lantern. As you move farther from camp, the world opens around you. The grass sways in long, slow waves, shimmering like silver fur under the moonlight. Every step crunches softly, as if the earth is trying not to wake anyone. You notice something interesting. The air feels different out here, fresher, cooler. With every breath, you inhale the faintest trace of the ritual smoke lingering on your clothes. Earthy, herbal, warm. It makes you wonder how many travelers throughout history carried that same scent with them as they walked through similar nights. Your major fact arrives as you wander. Ancient Greek historians wrote that Scythian tribes used hemp smoke in cleansing rituals after battle purification, stress relief, spiritual reset, all bundled into one aromatic cloud. But historians still debate whether these ceremonies occurred after every conflict, or only on special occasions, perhaps when the tribe felt the need to symbolically reset the soul. Ahead of you, the grass shifts suddenly. You pause. A shape emerges small, quick, scampering through the brush. A steppe fox. Its tail flicks like a paintbrush dipped in moonlight. It pauses, looks at you, squints with judgment. Foxes are naturally skeptical, and darts away. You whisper a polite apology for existing. You continue walking. In the distance, you spot a cluster of low stones, arranged in a circle, weathered, half-buried, ancient. You approach. The stones are smooth, cool to the touch, marked by centuries of wind and whispers. These are boundary stones, likely marking an old meeting place. Tribes use spots like this for trade, worship, or long discussions about whose goats wandered into whose pasture. Someone once stood here. Many someones. Hundreds, maybe thousands. You lean forward, running your fingers lightly across the cool surface. It feels grounding, like touching the spine of time itself. Your obscure tidbit appears here. Some ancient nomadic cultures tossed hemp seeds into the fire during negotiations. If the seeds popped loudly, they believed it was a sign the deal would succeed. If they didn't pop, well, let's just say everyone went home grumpy. You picture two chiefs staring at a stubborn seed in awkward silence, and the mental image is surprisingly funny for such an important ritual. You stand for a moment longer, letting the silence settle. The moon sits high, unbothered by mortal concerns. Clouds drift lazily, taking their time, refusing to be rushed. The whole sky feels like a giant lullaby stretching above you. On your walk back toward camp, you notice how the fire's glow flickers just at the edge of sight. An amber lantern in a sea of dark blue. You follow that warmth the way ancient travelers followed stars. A horse lifts its head as you pass. It watches you with mild curiosity, then immediately decides you're not interesting. Its priorities are valid. Back at camp, only a few fireside watchers remain awake. One of them lifts a hand in greeting. You return it with a peaceful nod. The ritual pots still sit by the coals, giving off faint ribbons of smoke that rise like slow-moving ghosts into the night. You sit again, letting your breath steady, letting your heartbeat sync with the quiet rhythm of grass and wind and snoring animals. Something shifts inside you, not dramatic, not loud, just a feeling of settling, like a soft stone lowering onto soft earth. You are here. You are calm, and the night is only beginning to unfurl its ancient tapestry. You're still settling back onto your mat when a soft shuffling sound approaches light footsteps, deliberate, carrying the weight of someone who knows exactly where they're going. You look up to see the camp's apprentice herbalist, the same one who had been trimming leaves in the hidden garden earlier. Their hair is tied back with a strip of hemp fiber, and they carry a small lantern whose warm glow sways like a lazy firefly. Without speaking, they motion for you to follow. You rise, curious, your joints making the kind of quiet pops that sound ancient enough to fit in perfectly here. The apprentice leads you toward a small tent near the outskirts of camp, away from the louder fires and closer to the silence. Inside, the tent is dim but warm. Bundles of herbs hang from wooden frames, their shadows dancing along the canvas walls. The air smells like crushed flowers, dried grass, and a hint of resin that clings sweetly to the back of your throat. A low table sits in the center, covered with bowls, pestles, powders, oils, and a carefully arranged wooden tray holding dried cannabis flowers sorted by size and texture. The apprentice settles onto a cushion and gestures for you to sit across from them. Then, with the slow, patient movements of someone taught by a very stern elder, they lay out a small lesson just for you, an introduction to how ancient herbalists worked with the plant. First, they pick up a small bundle of hemp fibers. They place it in your hand. It's surprisingly soft, more so than you expected, and slightly warm, like it remembers the sun. The apprentice shows you how these fibers were twisted into thread, then braided into rope that could bind tents, tie down saddlebags, string bows, or secure the world's earliest attempt at a hammock that definitely didn't pass safety standards. Your major historical fact arrives here gently. ancient Mesopotamian tablets describe hemp as a useful plant used in medicine and textile production as early as 3000 BCE. Archaeologists have even found hemp fibers preserved in clay-soaked ruins, proof that the plant wasn't just a ritual companion, but an everyday tool woven into life itself. Yet historians still debate whether hemp was grown intentionally in large-scale fields or simply harvested from wild patches that grew along riverbanks. The apprentice next opens a tiny jar filled with crushed seeds. They encourage you to sniff. The scent is nutty, warm, slightly oily. They mimic shaking the seeds onto a hot stone, just like you saw earlier during the ritual. Then they pour a few into a shallow dish and add a drop of water. The seeds glisten, releasing a faint aroma. You watch, oddly mesmerized, like these seeds are performing a tiny dance meant only for you. They gesture to their own stomach, then to the seeds, explaining that seeds were eaten for nutrition, especially in lean seasons when meat was scarce. Rich in oils, mild in flavor, useful as both food and medicine. You realize you have vastly underestimated the humble hemp seed. Next comes the resin. A small piece is placed on the table. A dark, sticky nugget, shaped like a pebble. The apprentice warms it between their fingers, softening it. They show how it was mixed with fats or oils to create balms that eased aches from long travel, cold winds, and the unfortunate realities of early human ergonomics, which included sitting on rocks way more than anyone should. For your obscure tidbit tonight, in some ancient Indian texts, cannabis was described as one of the 5 sacred plants, believed to house a guardian spirit. It wasn't worshipped in a dramatic, golden altar way, but rather respected as a quiet companion, a plant with personality, purpose, and a tiny, mischievous streak. The apprentice picks up a mortar and begins grinding dried flowers into powder. The rhythmic scrape of stone against stone fills the tent like a heartbeat. They stop, hand you the pestle, and motion for you to try. You do your best, though your movements likely qualify as enthusiastically clumsy. The apprentice smiles kindly anyway. Teaching patience must be part of their training. When they finish showing you the basics, they pour warm herbal tea into 2 small cups. You sip yours carefully. The flavor is soft floral, grassy, with a faint sweetness that lingers. The warmth spreads through your chest, calm and steady, a plant-based hug from the ancient world. The apprentice doesn't speak much. They don't need to. Their quiet presence feels grounding, like sitting with someone who knows how to listen to wind and plants with equal respect. The lantern flickers softly behind them, casting gentle shadows that sway like slow dancers. Finally, the apprentice shows you a tiny scroll made of pressed bark. On it are simple sketches, drawings of leaves, roots, seeds, symbols, indicating when to harvest and how to prepare remedies. The scroll is fragile, delicate, probably older than half. The camp. They let you hold it anyway, trusting you with the weight of knowledge carried through generations. When the lesson ends, they bow their heads slightly and gesture toward the tent flap. The night waits outside, cool, star-streaked, quiet. As you step out, you feel a little more connected to the world beneath your feet, to the hands that shaped the past, to the plants that shaped lives in ways both subtle and profound. You breathe in the night, you let it fill the spaces inside you that needed calming, and you walk back toward the fire, changed just a little. You make your way back toward the center of camp, expecting the fire to be the next stop on your wandering path. But before you reach it, a low, melodic whistle drifts through the darkness. Gentle, steady, and so rhythmic, it almost sounds like someone coaxing the wind itself. You follow the sound. It leads you to a small fenced enclosure near the far side of camp. Inside, the animal keepers move quietly among the horses, sheep, and a few camels still awake and chewing hay with the slow determination of creatures who consider chewing a personality trait. A pair of dogs stretch lazily near the entrance, one yawns so wide it nearly folds in half. One of the keepers, a man with a heavy coat and a face like carved stone softened by warmth, waves you in. You duck under the fence and step onto the flattened grass, instantly surrounded by the soft huffs and earthy scents of working animals. It feels peaceful here, calm, grounded, practical. The energy of the camp is different in this corner, steadier, quieter, smelling faintly of hay, dust, wool, and the lingering sweetness of the ritual smoke drifting slowly through the night air. The keeper gestures for you to follow him. He leads you to a small table lit by a clay lamp. On it rests a folded cloth bundle tied with hemp string. He unrolls it, revealing a collection of grooming tools, salves, and pouches of dried herbs including, you notice, finely shredded hemp fibers and seeds. He lifts one of the pouches, opens it, and passes it toward your nose. The scent is grassy, warm, slightly nutty. He explains, using gestures and a few words, you're starting to recognize that cannabis wasn't just for people. Some nomadic communities fed small amounts of hemp seed to horses to help maintain glossy coats and steady temperaments, especially on long journeys. Your major historical fact of this section emerges naturally. Ancient Scythian horses were famously powerful and often treated with mixtures of herbs, including mild cannabis preparations, to help with inflammation from riding and to soothe stress during migration. Archaeologists even found remnants of hemp fiber in early horse grooming kits. Still, historians debate whether this use was widespread tradition or practiced only by certain tribes with closer spiritual ties to their animals. You reach out and gently stroke the neck of a nearby horse. Its coat feels thick and warm beneath your fingers, muscles shifting smoothly under the skin. The animal exudes calm, watching you with soft, dark eyes that seem to hold an entire lifetime of wind, grass, and horizon. Another keeper approaches carrying a small bowl of oil mixed with crushed herbs. He dips his fingers in and demonstrates how they massaged sore joints after long rides. He motions for you to try. You kneel beside a patient old camel, whose expression suggests it has witnessed the full spectrum of human nonsense and remains profoundly unimpressed. You rub a little of the herb oil into the camel's knee. The camel blinks once, very slowly, like it is tolerating you out of politeness. You feel honored anyway, for your obscure tidbit of the night. Some nomadic cultures believed that animals exposed to cannabis smoke during rituals could carry the calm into battle or long travel days. Whether the animals actually inhaled enough smoke to feel anything is questionable, but the belief itself shaped how ceremonies were designed, often allowing the smoke to drift intentionally through the animal enclosures. One of the dogs, a shaggy creature with the charisma of a retired guardian spirit, trots over and flops down beside you. It nudges your hand insistently until you scratch behind its ears. The keeper laughs a low rumble and gestures that this dog has good instincts. You accept the compliment on the dog's behalf. The moon is high now, painting every animal's back in silver. The horses shift and snort quietly. The sheep huddle together like a single woolly cloud. A young camel tries to scratch its head against a post, misses, and looks deeply offended at the post for moving. The keepers continue their tasks, moving with practiced efficiency. You notice how close their bond with the animals is, how each creature receives a soft pat, a murmured word, or a careful brushstroke. In a world without modern medicine, these small acts of care meant everything. They kept the camp alive, moving, thriving. One keeper shows you a braided rope made entirely of hemp fibers, strong, flexible, smooth to the touch. He loops it loosely around your wrist to demonstrate its softness, then pulls it away with a smile. It's the kind of rope that could tie down tents in a storm or guide horses across rising rivers. When he sees your interest, he places the rope in your hands. You turn it over, feeling its weight, its faint plant scent, its quiet promise of durability. It's easy to imagine someone walking across endless plains with nothing but a bag of seeds, a trusted horse, and a rope like this to anchor their world. The keepers finish their night's duties one by one. The animals settle. The wind quiets. The sky stretches wide and soft above you, as if draped in gauze. The head keeper nods toward the fire in the center of camp. Time to rejoin the others. You bow your thanks in an awkward but well-meaning gesture, and the keepers smile, amused in a kind way. You slip out of the enclosure, the dogs watching you go with sleepy approval. The night feels fuller now, wider, richer, filled with the gentle wisdom of both plants and animals. And as you walk back toward the embers, you feel that soft, ancient calm settling deeper into your bones. You return to the fire, expecting quiet conversation and maybe another cup of that mysteriously comforting herbal tea. Instead, you find a man hunched over a flat piece of stretched leather, illuminated by a single flickering lamp. His hair is long and tangled in the way only geniuses or people who don't own combs can manage. His cloak is covered in charcoal smudges, and his fingers are stained with ink so thoroughly he might as well have dipped them directly into history. This is the camp's mapmaker, and he looks without question delighted that you have approached. He gestures for you to sit. Then he sweeps one long line of charcoal across the leather, glances up at the sky, squints, and makes another line with exaggerated confidence. You assume he knows what he's doing. His vibe suggests equal parts brilliance, and please don't touch anything. He points upward, inviting you to follow his gaze. The stars tonight are sharper than they've been all evening, cold and clear, each one shimmering like a tiny shard of polished bone. The Milky Way cuts across the sky in a pale arc, bright enough to cast the faintest silver glow on the steps below. The mapmaker raises a small bowl of smouldering herbs, sage, juniper, a pinch of cannabis resin. The smoke rises in soft spirals, drifting toward the stars as though delivering a message. He waves the bowl gently, letting the scented air envelop the workspace. It's oddly appropriate after all. Many ancient cultures believed that smoke helped sharpen intuition or reveal paths not visible in daylight. He taps the leather map with one charcoal-stained finger. Then he taps the stars. Then he taps your forehead lightly with a look that says, "Pay attention, traveler. This is how the world was once understood. Your major historical fact arrives now." Ancient Scythian and Persian travelers used a combination of star paths, wind direction, and plant markers, including widely growing cannabis patches, to navigate long routes across the steppes. Cannabis often grew near riverbanks and fertile soil, so spotting a cluster meant water, shelter, and safe grazing were nearby. Historians still debate whether this was intentional planting or nature simply lending a helpful hand. The mapmaker draws a tiny symbol resembling a plant, three-leafed, unmistakable near a river he marks with sweeping curves. He points to it proudly. Ah, this map literally uses cannabis as a location marker. You try not to smile too broadly as he continues sketching. He then hands you a small stick of charcoal. You freeze. He clearly expects you to contribute, and you, unfortunately, draw like someone whose artistic peak was a lopsided stick figure in third grade. Still, you give it a try. You draw a line that might be a trade route, or a river, or a very confused snake. The mapmaker squints at it, tilts his head, squints again, then nods approvingly, either because he is polite or because he has interpreted your accidental zigzag as a brilliant depiction of a mountain pass. Encouraged, he continues. Next comes your obscure tidbit. Some nomadic groups burned cannabis during nighttime mapmaking sessions because they believed the rising smoke made stars appear brighter and more instructive. Was it atmospheric illusion, spiritual belief, or just an early version of mood lighting? Hard to say. But you can't deny the combination of smoke and starlight feels strangely guiding. The mapmaker flips to another piece of leather and shows you older markings, faded trails, tiny symbols resembling tents, fire pits, and grazing lands. His finger traces a long, looping path connecting them. He pantomimes traveling, resting, planting seeds, harvesting, moving on. You realize these maps aren't just geography. They're memory, they're community, home, stretched across miles. He taps a spot near the edge of the map and mimics blowing wind across it. Some routes depended entirely on seasonal gusts. North winds for winter travel, southern winds for summer. A clever idea, unless the wind forgot its job that year. He offers you the charcoal again. This time, you draw a tiny symbol beside one of the clusters of hemp leaf markers, a camel. It turns out surprisingly okay. The mapmaker looks delighted, claps once, and immediately adds a second camel to accompany it. A caravan now exists because of your artistic contribution. Congratulations. You've invented ancient world fan art. The air grows cooler, the smoke thins. The stars become sharper, as if chiseling themselves into the sky. The mapmaker sets down his charcoal and lifts the bowl of smouldering herbs once more. He waves the smoke upward, murmuring a phrase that feels like a blessing. Something about journeying well, sleeping deeply, and trusting the horizon. He gives you a gentle pat on the shoulder, smudging charcoal onto your cloak in the process. This seems to be his version of good night. As you rise to leave, the mapmaker gazes back at his work, humming contentedly. The leather map glows faintly under the lamplight, lines and symbols forming a quiet tapestry of movement and meaning. Outside the mapping tent, The night feels bigger than before, like the sky has opened another layer of depth just for you. You walk back toward the fire with slow steps, feeling the weight of distance, history, and calm settling around you. The embers glow, the wind whispers. The stars guide you gently toward whatever comes next. When you step back into the central part of camp, you're greeted by something unexpected. Warmth, chatter, and the unmistakable crackle of fresh food being prepared. It seems the caravan's arrival and the gentle lull of the night has inspired the group to hold a small midnight feast. Not the dramatic kind with trumpets or overflowing platters, but the cozy, communal kind where everything smells like comfort and the stars feel like invited guests. A long, low table has been set out near the fire pit. Around it, people sit cross-legged, wrapped in furs and woven blankets, each holding bowls or wooden plates filled with simple but fragrant food. Someone waves you over an eager gesture, like they've been waiting specifically for you to show up so they can spill the gossip of the ancient world. You take a seat. A warm bowl is placed in your hands almost instantly, as if the universe is rewarding you for arriving on time for once in your life. It contains a rustic stew, rich, earthy, dotted with softened root vegetables and little toasted seeds floating on top like tiny boats in a delicious sea. You taste it. It's wonderful, nutty, creamy, and surprising in the most comforting way. Hemp seeds. There they are again. The unsung heroes of ancient nutrition. A woman beside you, with hair braided thick and glossy, taps your bowl and nods proudly. She scoops a handful of roasted seeds from her own plate and explains using gestures and a mix of simple words that hemp seeds were one of the most valued foods during lean years. Packed with oils, protein, and flavor, they filled bellies when the hunt was poor or the river stingy. Your major historical fact arrives smoothly. In early Chinese agrarian texts, hemp seed porridge was described as a staple food during winter months, providing warmth and sustenance when other crops failed. Yet historians still debate whether this porridge was a daily meal or a seasonal fallback because ancient people were, just like you, sometimes vague in their recipe notes. You nibble a few roasted seeds. They crunch pleasantly, releasing that same warm, buttery flavor. Someone refills your bowl without asking, ancient hospitality, at its finest. Then the stories begin. Not grand legends this time, but simple tales, funny mishaps, daily frustrations, good harvests, bad fishing days, a goat that once escaped and disrupted an entire wedding ceremony. A young man across the table reenacts a scene where he tripped over a basket of drying hemp stalks and fell directly into a pile of wool. The crowd erupts into laughter. Even the fire seems amused, spitting sparks at just the right comedic timing. For your obscure tidbit, some early Central Asian communities mixed hemp seeds with honey and crushed nuts to create a kind of festival candy. It was sweet, energizing, and apparently so beloved that children were known to steal it from storage jars, causing annual mystery investigations that puzzled the elders but delighted the culprits. You imagine sticky-fingered ancient toddlers sprinting away from justice. As the feast continues, someone passes around a small bowl of flatbread sprinkled with herbs. Someone else pours warm fermented milk into carved wooden cups. The flavors blend earthy, tangy, rich, and everything feels both foreign and deeply familiar, like a recipe you didn't know you missed. The man to your right uses expressive hand motions to explain how different tribes prepared cannabis. Some crushed seeds for oil, some dried leaves for poultices, and some burned flowers for rituals. He mimics grinding, sprinkling, inhaling, then shrugs dramatically, indicating that sometimes people didn't need a reason. Plants were simply part of life. A woman across from you leans in and whispers conspiratorially, no idea what she said, but the tone is unmistakably, "You didn't hear this from me." She gestures toward one of the travelers, raises her eyebrows, and the entire table snickers. Apparently, even in ancient times, the gossip pipeline was fully operational. Someone hands you a cup of warm spiced drink. It tastes faintly of cinnamon, cream, and something you can't identify but fully approve of. You sip it slowly, letting the warmth move through your chest. The night loosens its grip on your mind. The sounds fade into soft murmurs, like the background hum of a peaceful dream. Then, a small girl climbs onto the table, literally steps up onto it, and declares with absolute confidence that she will now perform a traditional dance. The adults scramble to move bowls out of the way. She lifts her arms, sways dramatically, spins once, and ends by bowing so low she nearly falls off. The crowd erupts in applause. She beams, proud as a queen. You clap too, because ancient or modern, children performing improvised art deserve encouragement. The fire pops again, sending a spray of sparks spiraling upward. They drift, slow and glowing, until they vanish into the cool, dark sky. Somewhere beyond the tents, a horse snorts, a camel grumbles, someone's laughter trails into the wind. The feast winds down gradually. People lean against one another, bellies full, eyes drooping, voices becoming softer and fewer. The last few seeds crackle in the bowl beside you, fragrant and warm. You take one more bite of the seed, and honey mixture someone placed in your hand. It melts slightly, sweet and rich. And you think, history tastes better than the textbooks let on. Eventually, someone taps your shoulder lightly and gestures toward the fire, as if reminding you that the night still has more to show. You stand, stretching your limbs, and feel the warmth of the feast settle into you like a soft blanket. The world outside the circle of fire glows, faintly waiting, quiet, endless, and you step forward, ready for whatever ancient calm waits next. You step away from the fading feast, your footsteps slow and soft, the warmth of roasted seeds still lingering in your belly. The fire crackles behind you, but a different kind of glow catches your attention, dim, steady, pulsing like a heartbeat from within a nearby ridge of stones. A figure sits there, alone, still as carved wood. It's the camp's wind reader, an elder whose presence you've noticed throughout the night, always stationed on the edges, always listening more than speaking. Their hair is silver and braided with thin cords of hemp fiber, each strand decorated with small carved beads that chime faintly when they move. Their eyes reflect the firelight in small, calm glimmers. The elder lifts a hand, inviting you wordlessly to come closer. You sit beside them on a flat stone, still warm from the day's sun, and the night air settles around you like a cool blanket. The elder closes their eyes, inhales deeply, and listens, truly listens, to the wind weaving through the grass, to the quiet hum of insects, to the soft creak of tent ropes swaying, to the slow breathing of the earth itself. When they finally speak, their voice is low and gravelly, the kind of voice that sounds like it's been seasoned by decades of weather and wisdom. They tell you, through a mix of sparse words and detailed gestures, that all nomadic journeys depend on the wind. Its direction determines the migration path. Its strength predicts storms. Its scent reveals nearby plants, water, and animals. You sit quietly, letting the idea sink in. In your world, weather is a phone notification. In theirs, it is a lifelong relationship. The elder reaches into a small pouch and pulls out something familiar. Hemp fibers, finely spun and braided into a tiny strip. They hold it up in the moonlight. The braid flutters, moves, twists slightly. The elder observes the movement with the intensity of someone reading sacred text. Your major historical fact arrives gently. Some ancient Eurasian tribes used thin strands of hemp to read subtle shifts in wind direction. The fibers were lightweight, responsive, and plentiful, perfect for makeshift weather instruments long before compasses existed. Yet historians still debate whether this technique was widespread knowledge or a specialized craft passed down through select families like this one. The elder smiles at you, an expression so soft it could be mistaken for wind itself. They press the braided hemp strip into your hand. A gift, a lesson, a quiet acknowledgement that you're not just passing through this world. You're part of it now. You hold the braid between your fingers. It's impossibly light. It dances with even the faintest breeze, tracing invisible shapes in the air like brushstrokes painted by the night. Then the elder reaches into another pouch and pulls out a handful of dried cannabis seeds. They pour them into their palm, then slowly let them spill through their fingers. The seeds fall in a stream, ticking softly against the stone. A delicate rain of ancient possibility. Your obscure tidbit emerges here. Some nomadic groups tossed hemp seeds into the wind before long journeys, believing the direction in which the seeds scattered foretold whether travel would be smooth or troubled. A simple ritual. A moment of surrender to the forces larger than themselves. The elder performs this ritual now. They toss the seeds. The wind catches them gently, rolling them a short distance before settling them into a tiny arc across the dirt. The elder nods, approving. Apparently the night favors your travels. They then point toward the horizon, where the moon hangs low, huge and golden, painting the steppes in molten light. The elder mimics a walking motion, with their fingers across their palm, then gestures broadly outward. You interpret the meaning. The world is enormous, but you are walking it well. The wind picks up slightly, brushing your face. The hemp braid in your hand flutters, twisting, into a new shape. The elder watches it, then offers you one more quiet thought, spoken softly enough that you feel it more than hear it. Plants teach us what the world forgets. You sit together in silence for a long moment, watching grass ripple like silver water, watching smoke trails from the feast drift into the night, watching stars shift in slow procession across the sky. The stillness isn't empty, it's full. Full of weight, full of history, full of every footstep that ever crossed these plains. Eventually, the elder rises. They rest a hand on your shoulder, a grounding, steady touch, then walk back toward the camp with the slow, confident gait of someone who knows exactly how the world breathes. You remain on the stone for a few breaths longer, letting the wind cool your thoughts. The hemp braid twirls between your fingers. You feel peaceful, rooted, a little older, a little freer, and as you stand and head back toward the firelight, the night feels wider, deeper, more intimate than before. You walk slowly back toward the fire, the wind reader's hemp braid still resting in your palm like a soft, ancient compass. The camp feels quieter now, not asleep, exactly, but softened. The lively chatter from earlier has thinned into gentle murmurs, the kind people share only when the world grows still enough to listen. A few figures sit close to the fire pit. They are the night watchers, those who remain awake while others sleep, tending the flames, guarding the animals, and keeping the camp safe until dawn. Their posture is relaxed but attentive, the kind of calm alertness that comes from years of experience and maybe a lifetime of being the responsible one in their families. They greet you with small nods as you approach. You take a seat among them. Immediately, you feel the difference. This is not the energetic circle of the feast, nor the mystical haze of the ritual smoke. This is a quieter world, a world for whispers, embers, and breathing. One of the watchers, a broad-shouldered woman with a fur-lined hood and eyes that reflect the fire like two tiny coals, hands you a bowl of warm stones wrapped in cloth. You place it on your lap, letting the heat seep into your legs. She gestures at the fire, explaining that keeping warm at night isn't just comfort, it's survival. And cannabis's hardy stalks and fibers often served as kindling or braided fire starters in lean seasons when wood was scarce. Your major historical fact appears right on cue. Some ancient nomadic groups used dried cannabis stalks as both fuel and fire kindling, their fibrous structure catching flame quickly when shredded. Archaeological evidence of burnt stalks has been found in several ancient hearths across Central Asia, but historians still debate whether this was a primary fuel source or just a convenient backup when traveling beyond wooded regions. The woman tosses a handful of shredded stalk fibers into the fire. They catch with a soft hiss, releasing a faint herbal aroma that blends with the smoky air. Sparks rise like tiny golden fireflies before fading into the night. A younger watcher, barely more than a teenager, sits cross-legged on the opposite side of the fire, carving something into a block of wood. You can't see the design clearly, but the repetitive scraping sound is soothing, predictable, as if the night itself hums along with it. Another watcher pours thick, warm tea into small wooden cups. When they hand you one, the steam curls upward, carrying the scent of fennel, mint, and a faint undercurrent of resin. You take a cautious sip. The flavor is strong but calming, the kind of drink meant to keep someone awake without jittering their nerves. Then one of the watchers, an older man with a long grey beard, begins to speak. His voice is soft and steady, each word dropping into the firelight like a pebble into water. He tells the group about a time long ago when the camp faced a harsh winter. Food was scarce, the winds were cruel, but the people survived because they had hemp fiber for clothing, seeds for food, resin for medicine, stalks for fire, rope for securing tent walls that threatened to fly off in blizzards. The watchers nod quietly. You get the feeling they've heard this story many times, and yet it never loses its warmth. For your obscure tidbit tonight, In some ancient burial sites, archaeologists found tiny hemp-woven charms believed to protect against wandering spirits during night watch shifts. These charms were small enough to tuck under clothing, simple patterns knotted into braided cord. You glance down at the hemp braid the wind reader gave you. Maybe it's more meaningful than you realized. One watcher notices it in your hand. She smiles softly, taps her temple, then taps her chest, a motion that suggests, for clarity, for calm, for keeping your place in the night. A nearby camel groans loudly behind you, stretching its long neck before settling down again. The watchers chuckle. Apparently, a camel's dramatic bedtime routine is normal. The woman beside you leans forward, stirs the embers with a long stick, and explains that night watch isn't about fighting off dangers. Most nights are uneventful. Instead, it's about presence, awareness, letting the darkness know it has company, letting the fire know it is tended. You feel that presence, settling into your skin, the quiet vigilance, the comforting sense of belonging to a circle that keeps the world steady while others sleep. The younger watcher finishes carving and holds up the wooden figure for you to see. It's a tiny animal, a horse, or perhaps a dog, its form simple but full of character. It looks a bit lopsided, but charming in a way that feels intentional. He places it beside you, as if gifting you a small guardian for the night. The fire crackles gently. Someone hums under their breath. The embers glow brighter as a handful of hemp fibers and dry herbs are tossed in, adding a new wave of soft fragrance to the air. The night stretches around your small circle, vast and quiet, yet full of life. You sense the animals resting, the wind drifting, the stars holding their positions with ancient patience. Somewhere beyond the camp, a fox yips once, then falls silent. One of the watchers shifts closer and points at the stars, tracing a constellation with their finger. They explain that travelers use that pattern to predict seasonal plant growth, including when wild cannabis would be at its most resin-rich for ritual use. You try to follow their invisible lines through the sky, feeling oddly proud when you finally spot the shape. The watchers smile at your effort. Eventually, the elder watcher lifts his hand in a small gesture. Time to rest, or at least to return to quieter thoughts. Night watch continues without you, but you've shared a moment in their sacred stillness. As you rise, they nod their farewells, small, warm acknowledgements in the dim firelight. You carry the carved wooden animal in your pocket, the hemp braid in your hand, and a growing sense of ancient calm in your chest. The night remains deep, wide, peaceful, and you walk back toward your mat, feeling the world soften step by step. As you walk back toward your mat, feeling the night watcher's calm still buzzing softly in your bones, you notice something you somehow hadn't seen before. A wide, low tent, set apart from the others, lit inside by a warm amber glow that makes the canvas pulse gently like a lantern. The entrance flap is open just enough for a thin line of scented smoke to drift outward, sweet, herbal, swirling with what looks like tiny sparks of reflected firelight. You feel drawn toward it, like the air itself is inviting you closer. A soft voice from behind startles you. It's a young woman, one of the camp's sleep tenders, a kind of caretaker for those who rest uneasily. Her robe is embroidered with symbols you don't recognize, geometric patterns that seem to shift in the light. She smiles at you in that reassuring way that says, "Come, you've walked enough for one night." She gestures toward the glowing tent. You follow, because at this point, you've learned that ancient hospitality is not optional, it is destiny. The tent's entrance is covered with strands of dried leaves and small beads that jingle softly as you pass inside, like the tent is announcing your arrival to the air. Inside, the sleeper's pavilion feels different. The atmosphere is warm, thick, and soft around the edges, as if the world has draped itself in velvet. To your left and right, cushioned mats are arranged in gentle circles. Some people are already asleep, curled under blankets, breathing deeply, their faces relaxed in the flickering lantern light. The smoke inside is faint, not overwhelming, carrying the scent of crushed cannabis flowers mixed with lavender, chamomile, and something darker and resinous. A sleep blend created by ancient hands, for ancient dreams. Your major historical fact emerges here. In several early Central Asian and Near Eastern cultures, low-dose cannabis infusions were used as sleep aids, especially for people suffering from anxiety, long travel fatigue, or spiritual unrest. Ancient medical texts describe mixtures made from cannabis, poppy seeds, and herbs brewed into teas or burned in small quantities beside sleeping mats. Yet historians still debate whether these remedies were widely used or reserved for ritual specialists and honored guests. Tonight, apparently, you fall into that last category. The sleep tender leads you to a mat lined with soft animal skins. She kneels beside a small clay burner and sprinkles in a pinch of crushed flour, just enough to add a gentle aroma to the drifting air. The smoke rises in layered strands, weaving upward like a dream climbing a rope. You sit, stretching your legs out, feeling the cushion give under your weight. The sleep tender hands you a warm cup, containing a drink she calls night broth. You taste it slowly. It's earthy, mildly sweet, with hints of seeds and crushed petals. Comfort in a cup. Across the pavilion, another tender quietly adjusts blankets for a sleeping child. Their whisper, barely audible, blends perfectly with the soft crackle of the lantern wicks. Everything here seems designed to be gentle. For your obscure tidbit tonight, in one ancient tribe, elders believed that a faint scent of cannabis could anchor the spirit during sleep, preventing dreams from drifting too far into unsettling territory. As a result, they sometimes placed tiny resin pellets under pillows or hung small pouches of dried leaves above beds. The sleep tender demonstrates this by tying a small herb pouch to the wooden pole above your mat, the way one might hang a dream catcher in a modern bedroom. You settle deeper onto your cushion, breathing the warm air, letting your shoulders loosen. The sleep tender sits at your side for the moment, just watching your breathing, checking to make sure it has fallen into the evening's calm rhythm. Satisfied, she touches your wrist lightly, the gesture soft and grounding. Then she leaves you to rest, slipping quietly across the pavilion like a shadow skilled in silence. You lie back, staring at the ceiling of the tent. The lanterns cast slow waves of amber light across the canvas, shapes drifting like clouds on a pale sky. You feel your pulse slow, your breath deepen. Your thoughts become soft-edged, less like ideas and more like floating embers. Yet you don't fall asleep. Not yet. The night still has more to show you. Someone on the far side of the pavilion begins humming a lullaby, low, steady, rhythmic. The sound moves through the air like a warm blanket. You feel it settle gently over your mind, smoothing out the last of your restless energy. You shift onto your side, the hemp braid still lightly wrapped around your fingers. It feels like a grounding thread, connecting you back to the wind reader, the watchers, the garden, the ritual fire. The smoke curls upward from the small clay burner beside you. You follow its path with your eyes, how it sways, how it drifts, how it dissolves into the high space of the tent, like a slow exhale returning to the sky. Someone nearby murmurs in their sleep. A soft snore emerges from a pile of blankets. A camel grumbles outside, muffled by canvas walls. This pavilion is less a place to sleep, and more a place to gently slide toward the border of dreams, a liminal space. A bridge. You close your eyes for a moment, not to sleep, but to listen, and the night answers with a quiet, rhythmic whisper. You are safe here. Rest when you're ready. The smoke moves. The lantern light pulses. Your body loosens another small knot of tension. You stay awake, but only just. You lie in the sleeper's pavilion for a while, long enough for your breathing to sync with the faint lullaby echoing through the tent, but not long enough to drift into sleep. Something pulls you gently back to wakefulness. Not a sound, not a movement, just a subtle shift in the air, like a whisper brushing past your ear. You open your eyes. Someone is standing in the entrance of the pavilion. A lone traveler, cloaked, hooded, dust-covered, carrying a small satchel that looks far too heavy for its size. Their silhouette is framed by moonlight, creating a soft halo around their shoulders. There's a kind of quiet authority in the way they hold themselves, like someone who has walked farther than most and remembered more than anyone expects. The sleep tender looks up briefly, nods with unmistakable recognition, and gestures toward you. Ah, this visitor isn't here by accident. You rise from your mat and follow the wanderer outside. The air feels cooler now, tinged with distant frost. The stars shimmer with the kind of brightness that only appears after midnight, when the world is quiet enough for the sky to speak clearly. The wanderer leads you toward a small boulder at the edge of camp. There, they finally pull back their hood. Their face is lined with wind, sun, and miles. Yet their eyes are sharp, bright, and strangely kind. Like a teacher who knows you're about to receive a lesson you didn't know you needed. Without a word, they sit and motion for you to sit as well. You do. Then the wanderer reaches into the heavy satchel and pulls out a bundle wrapped in tightly woven hemp cloth. They place it between you, untie the knot. The cloth unfolds to reveal a small collection of ancient artifacts. A clay bowl with char marks, a thin stone grinder, a woven cord dyed a faint green, a pair of tiny wooden sticks with resin still clinging to their ends, a fragment of embroidered textile depicting a swirling plant motif. Each item dies, looks fragile enough to crumble if handled carelessly, yet the wanderer touches them with practiced ease. They lift the bowl first. Inside is a residue, dark, powdery, preserved by time and dry climates. The wanderer signs a few simple gestures and speaks softly, explaining in a mixture of broken words and symbols. This bowl was once part of a burial site, not a king's tomb, not a warrior's, but the grave of a healer. Your major historical fact arrives with gentle weight. Archaeological discoveries in the Pamir Mountains revealed burial mounds containing bowls filled with cannabis flowers, intentionally placed beside the dead, possibly to aid spiritual transition or honor their medicinal craft. Historians still debate whether the plant was burned during funerals, placed for symbolic protection, or buried as a comfort for the soul's journey onward. The wanderer places the bowl between you like one might place a relic upon an altar. Next, they hold the stone grinder and demonstrate its use, pressing, twisting, crushing dried plant matter. You watch the motion, slow and deliberate, the scraping sound soft as a whisper. They allow you to hold it. It's surprisingly heavy, smooth from countless years of use. Then comes the cord. The wanderer drapes it gently across your hands. It is incredibly fine, so thin and smooth you almost mistake it for silk. But no, this is hemp fiber, spun by hands long vanished, twisted into a ribbon that once tied together a pouch, a bracelet, or perhaps a ceremonial garment. For your obscure tidbit, some early steppe cultures wove hemp cords into protective bracelets, believed to guard travelers from night spirits, especially when crossing unfamiliar lands. The wanderer taps their own wrist when sharing this fact, then nods at you knowingly, as if hinting that your bracelet from the wind reader serves the same purpose. The final objects are the sticks, tiny, delicate, with resin hardened into their grooves. The wanderer demonstrates how they were warmed over embers to soften the resin, then pressed into cloth or powder mixtures used in healing rituals. They hold the sticks to your nose. The scent is faint, earthy, smoky, hauntingly sweet. A ghost of ceremonies long gone. You let the aroma settle into your memory like a faded melody. The wanderer then retrieves the embroidered textile fragment. Its edges are frayed, faded, worn by centuries, but the pattern remains clear. Swirling vines, branching into stylized leaves that unmistakably resemble the cannabis plant. They trace the shape with one finger. Then, unexpectedly, they place the textile into your hands. You freeze. This feels important, dangerously important. The wanderer smiles, small but sincere. Their voice, rough with travel and time, delivers only one sentence in a language you don't fully understand. But the meaning lands in you effortlessly, like a seed finding ready soil. Knowledge travels best when carried gently. The wind stirs between you. The hemp braid at your wrist flutters. The moon dips slightly behind a distant cloud, softening the night. The wanderer rises, refolds the remaining artifacts, tucks them back into the satchel, and gives you a final nod, one that feels like a blessing, a farewell, and a gentle encouragement to keep walking your path. Then, they fade into the darkness, walking toward the horizon as silently as they arrived. You remain seated for a moment, the fragment of embroidered cloth warm in your hands. The stitches feel impossibly small, impossibly careful. A message from someone who lived centuries before you, still speaking through thread. You rise slowly and walk back toward camp, the cloth held safely against your chest. The night feels larger than before, older, but welcoming. Like the past is gently opening its door a little wider for you. You walk away from the empty place where the wanderer vanished, your thoughts moving slowly, like water thick with silt. The embroidered cloth is tucked safely inside your cloak, its weight barely noticeable, but its presence unmistakably warm, like a whisper against your ribs, reminding you that you now carry something ancient, something meant to travel. The camp is quiet behind you. Too quiet. Not eerie, just softly sleeping, the way the world gets when night settles deep into its bones. A glimmer catches your eye. Not fire, not lantern light. Something cooler, softer moonlight reflecting off moving water. Curiosity nudges your feet into motion. You follow a narrow trail through tall grass, each step brushing softly against the dew forming on slender blades. The night smells of earth and distant rain, even though the sky is clear. Eventually, the path opens into a small riverbank, the water running low and slow beneath the moon. It's beautiful in a quiet way, the kind of beauty that doesn't shout, but invites you to sit down and stay a while. You do. You settle onto a smooth stone, its surface cool through your cloak. The river makes a soft gurgling sound, like it's trying to tell you a gentle secret but keeps getting distracted by its own bubbles. A few moments pass before you notice you're not alone. Across the river, perched on a fallen log, sits one of the camp's ritual attendants, the same young man who helped tend the fire earlier. He lifts a hand in greeting, then raises a small clay bowl filled with glowing embers. Smoke rises from it in slow, elegant curls, sweet, earthy, unmistakably containing dried cannabis flowers. It drifts across the river, the scent weaving itself through the cool air. He pats the log beside him. A clear invitation. There's no bridge, of course, but ancient practicality reveals itself. A stepping stone path cuts through the shallowest part of the river. You cross carefully, your feet splashing lightly, the water cold enough to make you inhale sharply, but calm enough to feel safe. When you reach him, he hands you the bowl, not to use, just to hold. It's warm in your hands, surprisingly so, radiating heat, like a miniature hearth. He gestures to the smoke, then to the sky, then to the water. You interpret the meaning. Smoke rises. Water flows. Memory does both. You take a slow breath, letting the scent settle into your lungs like a soft exhale from another time. Your major historical fact arrives now, swirling in the same slow rhythm as the smoke. In some ancient Central Asian traditions, cannabis smoke was used to guide reflective or meditative practices, not grand rituals, but quiet moments where individuals contemplated decisions, grief, or transitions. It wasn't about intoxication. It was about clarity, slowing the mind enough to hear what it had been trying to whisper all along. Yet historians still debate whether this reflective use was a structured practice or simply a personal, instinctive habit. The river attendant takes the bowl back and places it between you on the log. The embers glow, tiny orange stars mirroring the real ones scattered above. He picks up a handful of small river stones and lets them fall through his fingers. Then he hands you one smooth, round, shaped by endless miles of water. He points to the river, then makes a spiraling motion in the air. The meaning hits you. Memories move like rivers, sometimes carving, sometimes flowing, sometimes pooling quietly, until they're ready to move again. You toss the stone gently into the water. Ripples spread outward, soft circles widening, then widening more, until the river swallows them gently. The attendant nods like you've passed some sort of test. You didn't know there was a test, but you'll take the win. For your obscure tidbit, some nomadic healers believed that certain plants, including cannabis, held memories of the places they grew. Consuming or burning the plant was thought to temporarily borrow the memory of the land, allowing a person to understand their surroundings more intuitively. Whether metaphor or belief, the idea adds a poetic layer to the smoke dancing upward between you. The attendant taps the ground, then gestures to the far horizon. You follow his gaze. The moon rests just above the distant hills, glowing faintly gold now, preparing to set. The river reflects it beautifully like a pathway of liquid light leading into the sky. You sit together in silence, letting the moment settle. You feel the threads of the night weaving themselves into you, the fire, the wind, the smoke, the gifts, the stories, the seeds, the starlit maps, the dreaming tent. You feel connected, not in a mystical, dramatic way, just gently, like you've stepped into the rhythm of the world instead of standing beside it. You close your eyes for a breath, just one. When you open them again, the attendant has placed the bowl of embers beside you, its smoke rising softly, patiently. He bows his head, stands, and slips away into the tall grass without a sound, leaving you alone beside the river, with the smoke and the moon and the quiet reflection that only comes after midnight. The river flows, the embers burn, the past grows a little closer, and when you rise to return to camp, you carry that stillness with you like a tiny flame behind your ribs. When you return from the river, something has shifted in the night. The darkness feels lighter, thinner like a great curtain preparing to rise. The air is cooler too, with a faint crispness, hinting that dawn is quietly assembling itself just beyond the horizon. You notice movement near the animal enclosure. Soft voices, boots brushing against dew-wet grass, the gentle thump of saddlebags being lifted into place. A small group is preparing for early departure. Dawn riders, messengers, scouts, or traders setting out before the rest of the camp awakens. One of them spots you lingering, nearby, and gestures for you to come closer. Their face is calm but alert, framed by braids that swing slightly as they tighten the straps on their horse. You approach quietly, drawn as much by curiosity as by the soft lantern light flickering across their robes. There are 4 riders in total, each one adjusting their gear with practiced ease. Their horses stand patiently, tails flicking lazily, hooves shifting in slow rhythm on the packed earth. The riders' saddlebags are small but dense, filled with scrolls, herbs, spare clothing, and small bundles wrapped in hemp cloth. One rider unties a pouch from their belt and hands it to you. Inside is a pinch of dried cannabis flowers mixed with juniper and crushed leaves, an aromatic blend. They explain, through gestures, that travelers often carried these mixtures to burn during rest stops, not for grand ceremonies, but to keep insects away, warm their hands, or calm their nerves during long stretches of empty land. Your major, historical fact reveals itself naturally. Among many nomadic groups, cannabis was considered a traveling plant, useful on the road, easy to carry, reliable for fire starting, medicine, and simple rituals of protection. Some tribes even carried seeds specifically to scatter along fertile riverbanks, ensuring future travelers would find the plant where they needed it. Historians still debate whether this intentional seeding shaped the plant's rapid spread across Eurasia, or whether its natural resilience did most of the work on its own. A rider unwraps a slender strip of hemp fiber and ties it around their wrist in a quick, neat knot. A ritual, a reminder, a traveler's quiet blessing. One of them mimics tying a similar strip around your wrist. You oblige. The knot is firm but comfortable. It feels grounding, like carrying a little piece of the night with you. The riders move with growing purpose, their preparations quickening as the first whisper of dawn begins to brighten. The sky. Pink light gathers along the horizon, soft as powdered clay. The riders look at it with quiet familiarity, the same way modern commuters might glance at a clock with the subtle expression of, "Ah, yes. Time to begin another day of endless walking." A rider leads you to a small fire pit, still smouldering from last night. They sprinkle a tiny amount of the cannabis juniper blend into the embers. It ignites instantly. A small plume of fragrant smoke rises, curling upward, then drifting down the path the riders will take. The lead rider lifts their hand and inhales once, not deeply, just enough to acknowledge the moment. They nod, a gesture of thanks, a gesture of protection. For your obscure tidbit, certain tribes believed that if a traveler left behind a faint trail of fragrant smoke while departing at dawn, it confused malevolent spirits who followed scent rather than footsteps. It wasn't a fear-driven ritual, but a practical one, an ancient form of better safe than sorry. You watch the smoke drift. It moves slowly at first, then catches a light breeze, swirling ahead like a ghostly guide pulling the morning into motion. One rider takes your hand and presses something into your palm, a tiny clay bead carved with the swirling leaf pattern you've come to recognize. You know immediately it's meant to join your bracelet collection. The rider taps their forehead, then your chest. A simple message. Remember what you've learned. Carry it well. They mount their horses smoothly, the animals stirring with quiet energy. Hooves stamp lightly against the ground. Saddlebags clink softly. The lead rider gives a low whistle. The camp, still mostly asleep, doesn't stir at all, but the horses do. And then, with a gentle nudge, the dawn riders move forward. Their silhouettes pass through the drifting smoke, becoming half shadow, half light, as they ride toward the glowing horizon. You watch until they grow small, then smaller, then disappear entirely, into the pale gold shimmer of rising day. Only the faint smell of juniper and hemp remains fragile, lingering, curling softly through the air like the memory of an exhale. The sun begins to lift, slowly, quietly, painting the world in watercolor light. You stand there for a moment longer, the clay bead warm in your hand, the hemp braid whispering around your wrist. The air is still cool, the camp still asleep, the sky still waking. And in that space between night and day, you feel the ancient world settle around you again. Light as smoke, deep as history, quiet as breath. The journey is far from over. But dawn has arrived, and you're still walking with the past beside you. As the riders disappear into the pale horizon, the camp begins to stir, not abruptly, not loudly, but with the gentle, gradual warmth of a place that wakes the same way ancient mountains do. Slowly, patiently, as though stretching its limbs after a long, comfortable slumber, you walk back toward the heart of camp, guided by the early sun sneaking over the hills in soft gold sheets. The first rays catch on the tents, illuminating the woven patterns in the fabric, turning each thread into a tiny, glowing strand. Someone is already awake and working. A woman sits outside her tent, legs crossed, back straight, her attention fixed on a small wooden loom resting across her lap. She is the weaver. Not of stories, though, she surely carries plenty. Not of ritual garments, though, one lies folded beside her. She weaves the practical magic that holds this world together. Rope, cloth, cords, sashes, nets, all from hemp fibers harvested through seasons of careful tending. She glances up at you as you approach and gives a simple nod, the kind that says, "You're welcome to sit, but don't be surprised if I put you to work." You sit anyway. The loom clicks softly in her hands. The rhythm is steady, hypnotic. The fibers on the loom shimmer slightly in the early light, pale gold, soft green, hints of earthy brown. The weaver reaches to her side and lifts a handful of raw hemp fibers. She places them in your hands. They feel different today, warmer, maybe because you're beginning to understand what they represent. These fibers have been soaked, dried, combed, and twisted with patience. They're stronger than they look, and softer than you would ever expect a plant to be. Your major historical fact emerges as she works. Ancient cultures from China to the Caucasus relied heavily on hemp fabric for clothing, sails, rope, and even early paper. Some of the oldest surviving textiles in Central Asia are woven from hemp fibers so finely spun that modern historians marvel at their craftsmanship. Yet scholars still debate whether nomadic groups wove fabric themselves or traded for it along major routes like the Proto-Silk Road. The weaver uses both hands deftly, one pulling, one guiding, her fingers moving with the certainty of long experience. She weaves a narrow strap first, then a wider cloth. The colors shift as she adds strands dyed with clay pigments and crushed plant matter. You want to compliment her work, but you sense that she already knows it's excellent. So instead, you simply watch. After a few moments, she taps your wrist, not to startle you, but to get your attention. She holds up the strap she just finished weaving. The pattern is simple but elegant, small diamond shapes interlacing across its length. Then she gestures for you to try weaving your own line. Ah, the moment of truth. The test you absolutely did not study for. You take a deep breath and place your fingers on the loom. Your first motion is clumsy. Your second is slightly less clumsy. Your third actually resembles weaving. The weaver watches, her expression unreadable, though the faintest upward twitch at the corner of her mouth might signal approval or mild amusement. Hard to tell. For your obscure tidbit, early weavers sometimes mixed minced hemp fibers with animal hair to create cloth that was warmer, softer, and more durable. One ancient text describes such cloth as gentle as cloud, strong as river, which would make an excellent tagline for an ancient clothing brand. You keep weaving, slowly entering the rhythm. There is something meditative about it. Pull, tension, place, press, repeat. The repetitive movements calm your breath, steady your thoughts, and make your mind feel pleasantly empty, like a clear morning sky. The weaver takes back the loom to inspect your work. She traces the crooked line you made with one finger. She taps the spot gently, then she nods. It is a nod that means, this is not perfect, but it is sincere, and sincerity is enough. She sets your woven line aside, then begins a new piece, finer, more intricate. The pattern grows under her fingers like a living thing. Hexagons, spirals, tiny leaf shapes. You notice a motif repeating across the cloth, a stylized swirl that resembles the cannabis leaf, simplified into abstract geometry. The weaver sees you noticing. She points to the pattern, then to her chest, a symbol of identity, a reminder of ancestry, a quiet badge of belonging to a lineage of hemp workers stretching back generations. She finishes the cloth and places it gently in your hands. It's soft, flexible, beautifully made. You run your fingers across its surface, feeling the faint ridges of the pattern like a secret written in texture. Then she threads a thin strip through its edge, creating a small loop. She gestures for you to wear it, across your shoulder, close to your heart. It fits perfectly, draping like a gentle sash. The weaver finally speaks a single word, soft, simple, nearly lost in the morning breeze. Remember, you sit with her a moment longer as dawn grows brighter. The sky shifts from pale gold to soft rose. Birds begin to trill from somewhere beyond the tents. The camp awakens, one dream at a time. And as the loom clicks once more, continuing its patient song, you feel the weight of the cloth across your shoulder. A gift, a lesson, a thread binding you to the ancient world. You rise slowly, bow your thanks, and step back into the growing morning light. The world feels softer now, wider, filled with the faint, sweet scent of possibility and smoke drifting through the dawn. The camp is fully awake now, though gently, so like a chorus warming up, each voice joining the morning in its own time. Pots clink, horses snort. Someone coughs in that "I slept in the cold air" way that seems universal across centuries. The golden light of dawn spreads across the tents, softening their canvas edges until everything looks wrapped in honey. As you wander through the rising bustle, you notice a cluster of people seated around a low wooden table. They're hunched forward, hands busy, minds focused. Thin sheets of bark, bone, pressed clay tablets, and scraps of woven cloth lie scattered across the table. These are the camp's scribes, record keepers, memory holders, the quiet librarians of a world without libraries. One of them waves you over, a lanky man with ink-stained fingers, short braids tied back with hemp cord, and an expression that sits somewhere between "I'm very tired" and "I love my job." You sit beside him, feeling instantly underqualified, but welcome all the same. He points to a piece of bark stretched flat between smooth stones. Its surface is already covered with symbols, spirals, dots, branching lines that resemble rivers or wind paths. He taps one of them and raises his eyebrows, waiting to see if you recognize it. You don't, not even a little. But you nod with the intellectual confidence of someone who absolutely does not want to disappoint a professional. The scribe laughs. A warm, genuine sound that wrinkles the corners of his eyes. He then draws a new symbol on a scrap of clay. 3 small leaf shapes radiating from a center stem. Ah, cannabis. The shorthand symbol you've been seeing woven, carved, and traced across so many items already. He taps it, then gestures toward the table full of documents. This is your major historical fact for the section. Early record-keeping in nomadic cultures didn't rely on long written texts, but lists, symbols, and pictographs that tracked herbal stores, seed stock, grazing cycles, and trade items. Cannabis often appeared as one of the most frequently notated plants because of its versatility, medicine, fiber, ritual, food. Yet historians still debate whether these symbols represented quantities, uses, or seasonal markers. The scribe hands you a stylus, a stick of charcoal hardened by fire. He gestures toward an unused scrap of bark. Oh no, you're being drafted. Your first attempt at making a symbol looks like a spider wearing a helmet. He corrects your grip. Your second attempt looks like a leaf drawn by someone who has never seen a plant. He adjusts your wrist position. Your third attempt actually resembles something. Something leaf-like. Something that looks intentional. The scribe nods. A formal nod. A proud nod. You've officially contributed to ancient documentation. Somewhere in the future, an archaeologist may stare at this bark and say, "Ah, yes, this symbol must have been carved by a child or a visitor." And they would be right. Another scribe, a woman with henna-like markings on her arms, slides a clay tablet toward you. She points to a series of etched symbols along the edge. They depict the path of the caravan that arrived the night before. The mountain pass, the river crossing, the place where hemp was harvested, the next settlement. Her obscure tidbit arrives through gestures and expressions. In some communities, scribes burn tiny quantities of cannabis resin during long writing sessions, believing it helped them stay focused, calm, and more attuned to the flow of stories and knowledge. Think of it as ancient aromatherapy, less productivity hack, more soften the mind so the memory can speak. One of the scribes swings a small incense bowl toward the table. A thin ribbon of smoke trails up, curling between the tablets and papers. Its scent is faint but comforting. You breathe in without meaning to, and the morning air feels warmer. The scribes begin murmuring among themselves, comparing markings, reorganizing their scattered piles. You watch as two of them piece together a torn scrap of textile that contains a woven pattern matching one on your new sash. They study it, whispering, tapping the cloth with sticks dipped in ink. The scribe beside you points to the piece of embroidered cloth tucked into your cloak, the relic the wanderer entrusted to you. You carefully unfold it. The scribes lean in with immediate fascination, their eyes widening slightly. They speak in rapid, excited bursts, tracing the plant motif, the stitching style, the faded dye. One of them fetches a small pot of pigment mixed with hemp ash and begins sketching a copy of the textile's pattern onto a fresh piece of clay. Another scribe carefully draws a map around it. You realize you're watching something sacred, knowledge being preserved, history being renewed, memory being honored. The scribe who first welcomed you gently places his hand on the embroidered cloth and taps it twice, a gesture of gratitude, a ritual of respect, a promise that the textile's story will not be forgotten. He hands it back to you. You fold it carefully, your fingers moving with more awareness than before. The table erupting in activity quiets gradually as the scribes finish their work. One by one, they begin storing the documented pieces into leather rolls, wrapping them in cloth, or stacking clay tablets on wooden trays. The morning sun edges higher, drawing long shadows across the ground. The head scribe closes a scroll and hands you a small sliver of bark with your leaf inscription still visible. He presses it into your palm, a token, a souvenir, a reminder that you've become part of the written memory of the camp. You bow your head in thanks. He taps your shoulder with ink-stained fingers. The gesture leaves a faint charcoal mark, a blessing in its own quiet way. As the scribes disperse into the mid-morning bustle, you stand slowly, feeling the weight of stories both told and recorded settling into you like warm sunlight. You walk back into the camp's stirring life, with a new appreciation for the silent, steady hands that shape history long after voices fall quiet. The smoke hangs in the air behind you, still rising, still remembering. By the time you leave the scribe's circle, the camp has shifted fully into daytime rhythm. Morning has ripened into late morning, and late morning is edging toward midday. A warm, bustling hour when everyone seems to have decided that this is the perfect moment to trade, fix, mend, haggle, gossip, and generally make the world turn. A small market has formed in the heart of the camp. Not permanent, not planned, just an organic bloom of activity blankets spread on the ground, baskets full of goods, tools laid out like offerings, colourful bundles stacked in loose pyramids. Someone waves you over, then someone else, and before you know it, you're gently herded into the flow of trading, like a river pebble caught in a pleasant current. The air smells of roasted grains, sun-warmed cloth, and faint traces of last night's herbal smoke still clinging to everything. You wander past stalls, where people exchange pottery for meat, wool for spices, bone tools for leather boots, and stories for laughter. Then you notice something familiar: bundles of hemp stalks, coils of hemp rope, little pouches of hemp seeds, each tied shut with braided fiber, and dried cannabis flowers arranged like herbs in a healer's garden. Of course, the plant that has accompanied your entire night continues its presence here, woven into the bright bustle of daily life. A young trader, quick smile, quicker hands beckons you to his mat. He lays out several items made from hemp, finely woven cord, a tiny hemp seed oil lamp, a pouch embroidered with leaf patterns, a handful of resin lozenges wrapped in waxed cloth, a miniature figurine carved from hardened stalk, pith. He picks up the lamp first and shows Cord how the wick sits in a mixture of hemp seed oil and tallow. He gestures that it burns longer than pure animal fat and smells sweeter too. Your major historical fact appears naturally here. Hemp seed oil was widely used in ancient lamps, especially in regions where animal fats were scarce or valuable. It produced a steady flame and a mild aroma, making it ideal for tents, healing spaces, and nighttime rituals. Yet historians still debate whether its use was widespread or limited by the availability of seeds in harsher seasons. The trader lights the lamp briefly. A tiny flame blooms golden, steady, smelling faintly nutty. It casts a soft circle of warmth on your palm before he blows it out and beams proudly. Next, he hands you a pouch decorated with swirling leaf motifs. You run your fingers across the embroidery, recognizing the symbol now like it's part of your vocabulary. Inside are small resin lozenges, dark and glossy. He breaks one open to show the sticky interior. These were used, he explains, for easing sore throats, calming nerves on long journeys, and, occasionally, for making long meetings tolerable. You nod. This transcends time. For your obscure tidbit tonight, some traveling storytellers mixed hemp resin with sweet tree sap to create voice lozenges they swore helped them speak longer without strain. Whether this was truly medicinal or simply tradition sprinkled with optimism is still up for debate. The trader gestures to each of his items eagerly, but you sense he's building up to something. Finally, he pulls out a small carved tablet, thin, smooth, decorated with a pattern that looks suspiciously like a map of wind trails and seed-growing regions. He points to the symbols, then to you, then to the clay bead the Dawn Rider gave you. Recognition lights his face. He understands that you've been walking through the camp's layers of knowledge, ritual, craft, healing, story, travel, and he wants to add his own thread to your tapestry. So he gives you the tablet, just like that. A trade with no request for payment. You hesitate, but he waves his hands insistently. A gift, not a bargain. In return, he points at your woven sash, not to take it, just to acknowledge it. To acknowledge you as someone the camp has begun to accept, even if just for this single, sun-warmed day. You bow in gratitude, though you suspect your bow is a little awkward. He laughs and bows back equally awkward. Perfect symmetry. As you walk through the market with the carved tablet tucked under your arm, you pass a group of women spinning hemp fibers into thread. They sit in a wide circle, their spindles whirring in a rhythm that matches their conversation, light, teasing, warm. One of them beckons you closer, grabs your hand, and places a spindle in it. You try to spin. You fail. Spectacularly. The spindle drops, rolls, keeps rolling, continues rolling far longer than physics should allow. The women burst into laughter. Not cruel, joyful. They hand the spindle back, pat your arm, and continue their work with the speed of people who have been doing this since birth. You move on, weaving through the bustle. Children run past, chasing each other with braided ropes. A man displays fishing nets made from hemp fiber. A pair of elders debate the quality of harvested seeds with the seriousness of scholars arguing philosophy. A dog sits in the center of the market, receiving scraps from literally everyone. The sun climbs higher, the shadows shrink, the camp hums with life, and you realize that this lively marketplace, this weaving of daily tasks and ancient traditions, is one of the most important truths you've learned. History isn't built only in grand rituals or ceremonies. It's shaped in markets, in hands, in quiet trades, in sunlight on fiber, in laughter over failed spinning lessons. You breathe in the warm air, letting the scent of hemp oil, dust, and sun-baked cloth settle into you like a memory you'll return to. Eventually, the bustle softens. People return to their tasks. The market disperses, like morning mist. And you stand at the center of the camp, holding the carved tablet, feeling the day open around you with calm possibility. The journey continues. The past keeps unfolding. And you're ready to follow wherever the next thread leads. The afternoon drifts by in a warm, honeyed haze. Shadows lengthen. The camp settles once more into that mellow rhythm between effort and rest. By the time the sun dips toward the horizon, again slow and deliberate, like a storyteller preparing for a grand pause, you feel the entire world softening around you. People begin gathering near the central fire pit, just as they did the night before. But this time, the gathering carries a different energy. Not the curiosity of arrival, nor the lively buzz of trade, nor the intimacy of midnight rituals. This is a closing circle, a folding of the day, a return. You sit among them, a ring of faces illuminated by orange firelight, their shadows stretching long and thin across the ground. The embers glow brighter as someone nudges them, stirring the fire awake for one last evening. The ritual leader, the tall woman with the long braids, steady voice, and quiet authority steps into the circle once more. Her presence is softer now, mellowed by the long day, yet still rooted firmly in the strength of her role. She holds a small bowl. You recognize the scent even before you see it. Tonight's mixture, a blend of cannabis seeds, dried flower, juniper needles, and crushed herbs. A recipe for closure, a recipe for gratitude. The leader sprinkles a pinch onto the fire. It sizzles, crackles, flashes briefly into a small spiral of fragrant smoke that rises like a final blessing being written into the sky. The circle quiets, completely. Even the animals seem to pause outside the ring as if listening. Your major historical fact settles into the moment smoothly. Many ancient tribes burned small mixtures of cannabis at the end of communal gatherings, not for intoxication or visions, but as a symbolic sending, a way to mark transitions, return energy to the earth, and acknowledge the unseen threads binding community together. Yet, historians, they still debate whether these sendings were daily rituals or reserved for seasonal events. Tonight, it feels timeless, like it has always existed. One by one, members of the camp begin speaking not loudly, not dramatically, but with quiet sincerity. Small reflections, thank yous, stories of the day. A young apprentice talks about learning a new herbal mixture. An elder speaks of a memory from a faraway youth. A trader jokes about losing a sandal in the river and insists someone is hiding it intentionally. A child proudly explains how she caught a grasshopper, then releases it back into the firelit grass. Laughter ripples around the circle, soft and unforced, when the ritual leader gestures gently to you, inviting your voice into the circle. You feel a moment of hesitation, then warmth. You speak not with grand declarations, but with simple gratitude, for the welcome, for the stories, for the smoke that carried memory across the night and day. People nod. They smile. A few clap you, lightly on the back. Your presence has been woven into the circle, thread by patient thread. For your obscure tidbit tonight, in some nomadic cultures, newcomers were given small pouches of mixed herbs including cannabis, not as intoxicants, but as symbolic tokens representing warmth, good sleep, and safe travels. These tokens were placed under pillows, tied to horses, or tucked inside travel cloaks. As if on cue, the ritual leader reaches into her pouch and hands you a tiny woven bundle filled with fragrant herbs. A sleep bundle, she calls it with a smile. For dreams, for peace, for carrying a piece of this night with you. You bow your head in thanks as you take it. The scent is comforting, notes of resin, crushed leaf, sage, and something sweet like dried fruit. The fire dims slightly as dusk gathers fully. The sky shifts to deep purple. Stars blink awake one by one. The night stretches overhead like a great velvet dome. The leader adds one final handful of the herb mixture to the fire. The flames flare gently. The smoke rises, silky and luminous, drifting upward until it dissolves into the dark. It feels like closure, a soft ending, a collective exhale. But as the circle begins to disperse, the leader steps closer to you. She lifts a thread of hemp rope thin, strong, dyed with faint traces of green. She ties it around your wrist, gently, with steady hands. A final gesture, a parting blessing, a symbol of belonging to this night, this land, this memory. She meets your eyes and says one quiet sentence. You don't know the words themselves, but the meaning settles into your bones like warm earth. Wherever you walk, the stories walk with you. The circle dissolves into soft conversations and slow movements back toward tents and blankets. You remain where you are for a moment longer, feeling the warmth of the fire on your face, the cool blanket of night on your back, and the scent of smoke drifting lazily around you like a patient, ancient friend. The camp around you glows gently in the starlight. Animals settle, people curl beneath furs. Lanterns dim. You hold the sleep bundle in your hands and inhale its warmth. Your breath slows. Your mind softens. Your heart grows heavy in that peaceful, nighttime way that signals you've reached the final chapter of this journey. And yet there is still one more step, one final drift into the quietest edges of the ancient world. The fire has finally settled into a dim cradle of embers, glowing, pulsing, breathing in its soft, ancient rhythm. Most of the camp is asleep now. The tents stand still in the cool night breeze, their edges fluttering just enough to whisper against the air. The stars above are at their brightest, their deepest, clearest glow, like the sky waited the entire day just to give you this moment. You rise slowly from the circle, clutching the tiny sleep bundle the ritual leader gave you. The hemp bracelet on your wrist feels warm from the fire. The woven sash rests softly against your shoulder. The embroidered cloth, the carved tablet, the clay bead, all tucked carefully into your cloak, shift against you like quiet memories settling into place. But something feels different now. Softer, heavier. Like the air is preparing to lift a curtain you didn't realize was drawn. A familiar figure approaches the wind reader. Their steps are slow, deliberate, quiet as falling ash. Their hair, silver and braided, moves gently against their cloak as they stop in front of you. They look into your eyes, long enough for the world to fall silent around you. Then they lift a small bowl of embers already prepared, with a final pinch of the herb, mixture seeds, flowers, juniper, and resin. They hold it out to you. An offering. A farewell. A guiding lantern for the path back. You accept it carefully. The warmth radiates into your palms. Smoke rises thin, graceful, glowing in the moonlight. The wind reader turns and begins walking away from the camp, along a trail that leads into the tall, moonlit grass. You follow. The grass brushes against your legs, bending gently, as though making room for you. The air smells faintly of dew and earth. Somewhere behind you, a camel snorts in its sleep. Somewhere ahead, the wind moves like a soft hand reaching out to guide you. The wind reader stops at a small rise, a quiet overlook above the camp. From here, you can see everything. The tents, the animals, the fire, the last threads of smoke drifting upward, the stars holding their places like guardians of the horizon. The wind reader points upward, then downward, then places their palm over their heart. You understand. What you saw above lives below. What you carried on the wind lives within. They touch your wrist, the hemp braid, very gently. Then they blow softly across the bowl of embers in your hands. The smoke swirls upward, turning into a single soft spiral that rises straight into the night sky. Strangely straight, impossibly straight, as though the wind has paused just for this. The wind reader steps back, closes their eyes, nods once. The spiral of smoke begins to drift away from the camp, toward the horizon, like a path unfurling. A path only you can see, a path only you can follow. The world around you softens, the sounds grow quieter, the stars brighten to a gentle blur. The ground beneath your feet feels both real and distant, solid and weightless. And then with one soft blink the camp feels far away, not gone, just returning to its own time. You stand on the rise alone now, the bowl in your hands cooling. The spiral of smoke has vanished, the wind reader is gone. The camp below looks like a dream you're almost waking from. You inhale the last scent of the herbs, you exhale slowly, and the night folds itself around you like a blanket being pulled to your chin. You feel your own time calling you gently back. No rush, no urgency, just a quiet, warm invitation to rest. The final embers fade. The world shifts. Your eyes grow heavy, and the line between ancient time and your time dissolves like smoke into morning light. Now breathe, just a little slower than before. Let the night of the ancient world settle into you, not as a story you visited, but as a soft presence you can return to whenever you need it. Picture the camp behind your closed eyes, the fire glowing low, the tents resting under the stars, the animals shifting gently in their sleep. Imagine the warm weight of the woven sash across your shoulder, the hemp bracelet loose around your wrist, the soft bundle of herbs near your heart. Feel the quiet hush of the steppe wind brushing against your face, cool and patient, carrying the faint scent of resin and distant grass. Let that breeze move gently through your thoughts, clearing them out the way the smoke drifted upward through the night, slow and steady, dissolving into the dark sky. Your breath deepens, your shoulders loosen, your pulse slows with each inhale. Allow each part of you to soften, your jaw, your hands, your back, the tiny muscles around your eyes. Let yourself sink a little deeper into wherever you're resting, like settling into a soft patch of earth warmed by the last glow of ancient embers. If your mind wanders, let it wander gently, following slow footsteps along the moonlit trail, listening to the quiet hum of distant voices you've already said goodbye to. There is no hurry now, nothing you must hold on to, nothing you must do. Just breathe, just rest. The night is wide, the world is quiet, and you are safe. Let sleep come to you softly like smoke drifting upward, like the first silver light of dawn, like the last calm exhale of a long, wandering day. Good night.